I'm gonna remove the Twitter thing.
All right, welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 2 of season 5. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I am Paul LePage.
Back as always, our great producer, Mr. Alex Patakis.
Hey.
And on social, are we not live? And on socials, we have Danny. How's it going, Danny?
Yep, I'm doing great.
Okay. And one of our favorite guests joining us from Fort Lauderdale, it's Mr. Chris Fisher, which was the final spot of the Wolves preseason USA tour. Chris, how do you think it went? We had a lot of fun.
Oh, man. I got to go to Jacksonville. Very envious about Baltimore missing out. Seeing Danny, what a great group you guys had. But Fort Lauderdale was awesome. What a great way to close out the trip. Wolves were 2-0 in the Sunshine State, so it was awesome.
Yeah, the weather was also 2-0 in the Sunshine State, but did not live up to its name. But that's okay. We had a great time, partied in the rain. It was good stuff. Not as much of a good time was the result on Saturday in the season opener at Arsenal. 2-0 loss. Wolves really looked outclassed early on. However, played much better in the second half. Honestly, it could have been worse, but they could have gotten a point out of it. A couple big saves from the Arsenal keeper. So let's start it off with, Paul, though. This lineup was quite interesting. Back four and probably the strongest bench that we've had in quite a while.
Yeah, back four really summarized what we'd been looking at all throughout preseason. So it was somewhat of I wouldn't say gamble because it's obviously being worked on, but I think it was a case of how's a four going to fare against this Arsenal team that quite comfortably dispatched us playing a five both times last year. So that was encouraging for me in that at least they can roll out a back four and be competitive. It wasn't like we got that thump in. It wasn't goals flying in. They were competitive and there were some solid performances within it. Now, can it be tweaked? Can it be improved? Is there room for more bodies to come in and solidify it beyond the likes of Semedo coming in for Doc? Possibly. There was questions around Totti, which I can understand, feel it was a little unfair. But as it goes, if you can put out four at the back, look pretty confident away from home at Arsenal, I think it stands you in good stead about moving forward with that formation.
Chris, it seemed to me that with that back line, they were trying to counter Arsenal's speed and athleticism with Mosca and Totti. But they were kind of lacking a little bit in experience against a squad like that. How did you feel overall?
Yeah, you could definitely see it. A lot of times, I think if this game was played mid-season, a lot of the touches that you saw in the box, whether it was Havertz on the 2-on-1s on Totti, I think that really would have been a problem. And the fact is, Totti and Mosca are such a new group, even though they trained together throughout the preseason. It really could have been an effort. It's nice to have Craig Dawson in there during training to be able to teach these guys at such a young age. But I think veteran leadership is something that's well needed on that back line. And I think it's something when you go up against these clubs that are in the top six, if it's not early in the season, which a couple of these are, they're going to be capitalizing on those situations. But, I think they stood tall between Totti and Mosca. It's a learning experience against one of the teams that are going to contend likely for the Premier League this year for the title. And I didn't think they did bad for a young squad, a young center backs being back there. Semedo is definitely going to give them something they missed next week against Chelsea. At least I hope so. With Doc taking in his place or being in his place.
Yeah, Danny, I kind of feel like I like athletically Mosca and Totti together, but I think against a bigger squad, you might need to put Dawson's veteran savvy in there. What are your thoughts going forward?
Yeah, I'm at this place where I'm kind of like eager to just get a bunch of these early games through because, I know that we have a tough schedule to start with, but I think a lot of how we see this season is going to depend on how flexible we end up being. That was sort of kind of the promise with going to this back four, but still having players like Dawson around. I think like what I was excited about was to see how we might set up differently in different games. And so I'm kind of curious, as you say, like, when does Dawson come in for a start? Are those in particular instances, or are we going to like, once we have the squads that are settled at the end of the transfer window, are we going to like shift Tody out to left back more frequently? There are a bunch of questions like that I just, don't quite have an answer for yet. But overall, I was, I felt fairly positive about it, kind of the way that I'm sure Gary O'Neill was partly just backing up his players. But like, I know Tody had struggled a little bit, but it's also against a team that came within a hair of winning the title last year and a lot of firepower up front. So I'm not reading too much into it.
Mosca was making his Premier League debut. This season. Also, Strand Larson and Rodrigo Gomez, Alex, were making their Premier League debut. Just kind of quick thoughts on what you thought they did.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty solid. I mean, it's hard to be harsh on Strand Larson. I mean, he did have a chance that was just a ridiculous save, so we could be sitting here talking about a goal in his debut. Otherwise, he was going up against the best center back pairing probably in the league, if not in the world. They've taken other Norwegian strikers who are far more accomplished out of games before. So I think it's fair to say that we can bank on having a real number 9. And I thought he really showed glimpses of that guy that we've been missing for a very long time. And then Rodrigo Gomez, I thought was okay. In the preseason, he looked electric. There was a flash or two. There was that moment he kind of dribbled down the left wing and like split 2 defenders and came into the box and squared it for nobody. But like, in other matches that somebody's going to be on the end of that and one time that into the roof of the net. And so I thought they were both pretty solid given the opposition.
Paul, we were watching the game together at Nick's place in Houston, and it definitely wasn't a good performance early on, and it kind of felt like, Arsenal's going to score here at some point. And they did in the 25th minute. Kai Havertz with the great header off of a Saka assist. Did you feel like at that point it could get out of hand, or did you feel like they'd be able to right the ship like they did?
Balance of play, it definitely felt that Arsenal were in the ascendancy. But even with all of that, it was pressure, but it wasn't constantly save after save after save by Sarr. So there was always that scope of the game. I just felt that it was a real kick in the nuts, though, about how poor a goal it was to concede. When you're soaking up that pressure, you're trying to go in there with a game plan, and it's a bad goal to let all of that hard work go. The only caveat to that is it's a pretty awesome cross, and it really places the defenders in such a tough spot. And then the goalkeeper, does he stay on his line or does he try and come and claim it? But if that was me, I'd like to think I've got a better chance of stopping it by holding my position than I have by coming out and trying to get something on such a good ball. I'd have rather stood on my line, took my chances, and try and save the header when it came in.
In that first half, there wasn't much of an attack, Alex, which did lead to a good no stupid question from Dan Wilkes.
Yeah, hard not to think of where Dan went on this when you're watching it. But he said on X, were Wolves missing Netto, or were we just too slow in attacking Arsenal? Now, Netto did make his Chelsea debut in their opener coming on in the second half and definitely showed some glimpses of being Pedro Netto when Chelsea lost to City on Sunday. What do you guys think? Missing Netto or getting used to the new system? I mean, a little bit
Chris,
of both.
what do you think?
I think they're absolutely missing Netto. Even though he wasn't a big part of the preseason plans, I just think there's a chemistry that he built last year. Obviously, that speed that he has. But I will give Arsenal a ton of credit because the way that they were pressing was just impressive. You got a team that's trying to figure themselves out, working together. Arsenal, most of their starting 11 have been together for a while. So just the opportunity for these Wolves young players, Rodrigo Gomez, to get his debut and a start. They're trying to figure all this out together. Strand Larson as well. You could see there's growing pains, and especially when you come out, just like you guys said, Arsenal almost won it last year. When you come out against a team like that, there's going to be some bumps in the road, and the way that they were pressing, I think it made it evident.
My only thing with the setup, and particularly away from home against a team like Arsenal, is the issue with those inverted wingers. Now, when you got Gomez, obviously he's got the pace, he's got the talent, but he cuts his game off a little bit where ideally you want that touchline hugger that's getting the paint on his cleats and he's using that pace to burst down the wing and open the opportunity up that way, particularly on the break. Now, you say that we played with Netto as an inverted winger, but he had that ability to do it on the right-hand side, to do it on his opposite foot. He could hold the ball up, he could break a tackle, and then he could go and he could use that speed and add that ball control and move us up the pitch. Like the goal for Joe Gomez last year at Tottenham, that was a prime example of how you need a particular player with that skill set in order to play away from home against those types of opposition, especially when you're under so much pressure.
Well, the second half, Wolves came out a lot stronger. They were creating a lot of chances. Cunha came in for Bellegarde in the 57th minute, which I thought was good to see because he didn't look at all affected by that hamstring injury. Danny, did you feel like a goal was coming?
Funnily enough, I did. I thought it was going to be a little more jammy than that. I thought it was going to be, something, a bit later. But it was. I thought that we were doing, like you said, we came out with a bit more energy, and I don't know. It's funny, the stuff I've been reading since then. I just think that we were doing a lot of good work in terms of possession in the middle of the field that it maybe is easy to overlook. So I was actually looking towards the other end of the field a little bit for a goal, and as Alex mentioned, the very near header, it's like literally a razor's edge whether that goes in for Larson or not. So yes and no, I guess. I mean, it was a little more end to end.
Paul, what do you think about the formation once Cunha came on?
I think that helped with the transition of the balance of play. And I think particularly that flexibility that's been talked about was really apparent by the positions that Out-Nouri was taking up, in that definitely seemed a switch from being a left back to at least certainly more advanced, a little tucked in, more like a left-sided midfielder. And I think that's where we might see some potential, in that if we get a centre-back pairing with Mosca and someone else coming in, I've actually got genuine confidence that Totti could hold that berth as a left back in this particular formation. Then that gives license for Out-Nouri to play more advanced and impact the game a little more. That's where I saw the benefit, and I just think, again, when it comes to having that outlet, Cunha is the type of player that can give you that outlet or create something. So to have him back involved is important.
Alex, we've mentioned Mosca a few times, but we haven't talked about Mosca's antics on the field yet. he nearly strangled a player. He was falling down, right? He definitely gave somebody the shocker to get him out of the way. Do I need to explain that to Paul? No, let's hope not.
Maybe offline, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. So I think if this was against Wolves, we'd be like, oh my God, straight Reds, blah, blah, blah. But me, as a Wolves fan, I'm kind of glad we got one of those players that's got a little shit house in him.
Yeah, I agree generally with the thought that it's nice to have a center back who can get under some people's skins. I don't necessarily feel like Max Kilman or even Craig Dawson are really that guy. However,
I don't see Max Kilman giving a prostate exam on the field.
At some point, I think that the leniency of referees, which I felt like, side note, Jared Gillett, while we may not like him, I thought he officiated a pretty good game and let a lot of things go, which I was happy with. So that's going to wear off. And this whole, we can't penalize Wolves because it'll be too obvious that they were the team, the only team that voted no against VAR. So we don't, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt because they really took the shaft last year. That's going to wear off at some point. And those are going to be cards. That was ridiculous. So I think, Mario Lemina has been such a good captain. I would only hope that at some point he and Gary O'Neill or one or the other had a little conversation with Yerson and said, great performance out there, but all that stuff, like we would say in NFL football, like between the whistles, let's just cut that out. Let's not give anyone a reason to find a way to punish Wolves anymore, honestly. But otherwise, great debut, Yerson.
Yeah. I like Ryan McCarthy's comment here. You can join us during our live stream and comment, but he says Mosca is the best shit house. I agree. Here's the thing. I have a Dennis Rodman little Funko Pop character on my thing because I grew up a Bulls fan, and I was always like, Rodman's one of those guys who you absolutely hate if you're going against him, but if he's on your team, you love him. And I feel like, Chris, that is Yerson Mosquero.
You know me. I mean, I'm a Philadelphia sports fan, and we're probably the worst, right? I mean, we love the shit housing. I put out a tweet that Diego Costa is walking around going like this.
Oh, he probably loved it.
It's just fantastic. Look, he may not have learned a shit ton when he was in the MLS, but the fact that he's here, he's learned how to roughhouse. He ain't taking it from anybody. That first game is going to be a message right out the chute that he ain't here to screw around. He'll throw it down with the best of them. And, he's got to clean it up. I'm sure the vets pulled him aside and said, let's concentrate on what's going on the field. Because the chirping between him and Kai Havertz, the cutaways you were seeing on camera most of the game, it was awesome. Beats just all game long. Havertz would have a say at him. Masquerade was not taking it. He stood there just like a veteran, chirping right back at him. And for all the accolades that Kai Havertz has, and the money he gets paid, Yerson's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going right at you. You got to respect it.
I guess he learned that in Cincinnati. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was forged in CONMEBOL, and he just Copa America action and qualifiers. When you're playing for a crowd that might be vaguely touching 10,000, and you think no one's watching this on TV either, you feel like you could get away with pretty much anything, and that's what I feel like he was doing.
Well, I kind of felt like Wolves may have been able to pull out at least a draw. At least that's what my $5 that I put on it during the game at halftime said. Look, I've lost $5 in way worse ways than that. But Saka put the game away in the 74th minute. It's why he's Saka. I mean, we've talked about it. He's one of the top players in the Premier League. Just beautiful goal. And at that point, the game was over. But Paul, afterwards, Gary O'Neill, Mario Lemina voiced that they were pleased with the way Wolves play. I tend to agree, but you left Nick's place kind of quick, so I don't know.
Yeah, things to do, people to see. Immediate feeling was that sense of inevitability. But then when you watch the highlights back and then you start to see some of the X's and O's of the game, and especially for some of the comparisons with the games last year. It was a distinct improvement from some of the stuff that I saw posted. I think Gully with Molyneux Musings did some good stuff about touches in the opposition box and just general possession. So I'm still, with those types of results, I'm still looking at that throwback to the Nuno era when we'd go away from home and we'd put a really good challenge up and we'd surprise a few people. I don't like that mentality of going to the Emirates or wherever and only losing 2-0 and lying down and having our bellies tickled. I want to have that fear back that we're a genuine threat, and it could well come. You know, are we gonna win at these big six, top six grounds every time we go there? We're not. Could we lose every one, but then start to show up and win at places that we've never won before, like Newcastle and Brighton and those types of places, playing the way that we did on Saturday? I think it gives us a better chance, and that's a culmination of the team is starting to put together the formation and the way I think he wants to play. I think if that continues, we're gonna certainly win more than we'll lose.
Chris?
Yeah, I think going back to just the preseason and what we saw with Strand Larson, the ball's into the box, to be able to give him an opportunity to get off the mark and get that goal. You know, something I noticed also that developed in this Arsenal game too, and to Alex's point, he's playing against two of the best center backs in the entire Premier League. But I noticed that the big man, sometimes the ball gets lost at his feet. He struggles with it in tight spaces. And I think that's something we got to keep an eye on, because I know he's brought in there to hold the ball up, to be more of an aerial threat. He's a big guy. I mean, he's a unit, if you will. But it's something that bears watching, is the fact of Larson in tight space is what he's capable of doing with the ball, because we saw it in Arsenal. It got tied up at his feet and he couldn't get shots off or get the ball away.
Okay, guys, I'm debuting something special starting this episode. It's going to be the Squeaky Bum Meter. This is how worried are you about the Wolves' performance? Scale of 1 to 10. Paul, I'll start with you first. How worried are you about Wolves after this performance on the Squeaky Bum Meter?
What's the scale? How squeaky?
Oh, 10 is you are petrified. 1 is don't be sad, mate.
I'm at a 4.
Okay, Chris?
Oh, not to be repetitive. I mean, I've got baby wet wipes sitting next door in case anybody needs them, but I'll go 4. I don't think it's too much to worry about at this point.
Okay. Danny?
2, maybe even a 1. I'm not at all concerned. It's the best defense in the league.
Alex?
I hate to keep using the other Norwegian and City as a measuring stick. They did not score on Arsenal at all last year, and they're playing for a title. I'm in lockstep with Danny, a 1 or a 2, lower than Mike Allen, who chimes in with a 3. So I'll say 1.5 if that's allowed on your new Squeaky Bum Meter. You gotta tell me. I don't know.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Yeah, I would also 1.5 or 2. Todd from Minnesota says a 5. I'm not worried. I really left there going, you know what? 2-0 against a team that is favored by a lot of people to win the league on the road. First game, not worried. Not worried. Now we'll see a couple games from now. However, what I am worried about, and what would be way higher on the Squeaky Bum Meter, is John Percy's tweet today, which sent shockwaves again through Wolves Twitter. Despite getting all that money from Max Kilman and Pedro Neto, they are only projecting to spend around £20 million here for the rest of the window to maybe get a center back and a winger, because they're determined to safeguard their financial position. Paul, your reaction?
Squeaky Bum Meter is probably around a 5. I think there's some dark arts at play. Not dark arts, but there's some playing of the media. I'm sure within there, a little putting out a nugget and trying to help with a little negotiation back and forth. A Fosun there in to pump a load of money in? No. Are they the best stewards of the club going forwards? If that's the hope that they're going to do that, no. So I think the strategy's probably where we expect it to be with the current ownership structure. I just think that we're probably there or thereabouts of where we expecting to be with this strategy, with the moves that already happened. So our incomings came earlier. Obviously, we had Kilman around that time. Netto's the one that's come later. So I still think there's money there to be spent off the back of that Netto departure, and it really comes down to those also runs the bench on Saturday. We mentioned how strong it was, but how stacked it was in the wrong departments, in that they're effectively like four wide players with Sarabia, Chiquinho, Guedes, and who else was it? Podence. So that's where I see it changing, is that I fully expect 2, maybe 3 of those to go. And if that's the case, then suddenly that budget goes up a ton and it's a non-story. And I think another big area that people aren't factoring in so much is that wages come into this a heck of a lot. And on that bench, if you've got someone who's probably certainly in our top 3, maybe top 5, some say he's our highest earner, of Sarabia, and he can't even get a starting spot, then that's somewhat of a cause for concern. So I think wages factor into it. I think that if that's the case, you've probably got something around contract extensions with the likes of Semedo to keep him, and possibly Lamina as well to lock him down. That's got to be factored into it. So I think it's part of a bigger picture. I'm not too downhearted with it. I think we're going to be okay, but to what O'Neill says, okay means we're staying stable. We're not moving, and if you're not moving in the Premier League, you're going backwards. And at the end of the day, we're going to see the incomings and the outgoings, and we're going to be much more of a selling club, and the success that's linked to those sales and even wages, when they're put on the chart about the best playing teams get the highest positions. It's been fact proven time and time again. We're going to be in the bottom third easily of that group moving forward in terms of overall wages. Probably only the bottom, that the teams coming up are going to be lower, and that's a risk, because that factors into it all. That's the quality of the player. That means it's a boatload ton of pressure on O'Neill to get the team and the players at his disposal effectively punching above their weight to get those high positions, because the wage structure says that they shouldn't be in that category.
So I played devil's advocate after this came out. I said, look, Kilman got a good price, but basically that was spent on Rodrigo Gomez, Pedro Lima, and putting it in the bank to pay for Strand Larson next year. Plus, we do have to account that they are going to take a loss as far as FFP-wise whenever they sell Guedes, whenever they sell Fabio. And I still think Podence and Sarabia are more likely to leave this window, which they did put in there. If there are more sales, more money's going to be out there. Chris, I know we were kind of debating very early on. What are your thoughts?
I'm pissed.
What's it on the Squeaky Bum Meter?
It's a 9 or a 10, because here's the situation, guys. We know that Fosun's an economic entity over in China, right? They do their business a lot different than they do in the UK and in the United States. If the fact that the government's involved on it, well, you would think you would want to do better, because it would reflect better on what their nation's trying to achieve. But at the same time, they're going to take the cream off the top. They're going to take the profits. We saw it last year. I understand. I read Craig Spillard's tweet this today, which was fantastic. His last comment was, I'll leave you to amortize $43.6 million to see what we could spend on players, and it's not $20 million. I understand Paul's point. You can look, the glass is half empty or half full, but I see it as half empty because you look at just how Jeff Shee is. He's a shill for Fosun. It's an economic company. They just want to make money. The best way they could do that is by keeping them in the Premier League and spreading the badge. I don't think they're interested in winning and lifting trophies. I don't think they give a damn PR-wise of what they've done to themselves. The tickets, they want to be on the ticket prices of Arsenal, right? Then spend like Arsenal. I understand it takes time to achieve that. But even when people, and I'm sorry to say this, and I'm not trying to throw people under a bus, but when people from the club, off the record, I'm putting it on the record, they have told us, a lot of us in this room, the fact, and I see the wincing, but sorry, I'm a former reporter. I'm going to come out with it. The fact is, they told us that it was inherent in the front offices that this should not be done. Think of another club to sit there and pinpoint as where to raise ticket levels to. It doesn't make any sense other than the fact that they're just trying to reap the rewards financially off this club, and they'll turn around and sell it down the road and make a windfall of money over what they paid for it.
Mike Allen with a very good point. Close an answer to shareholders and not supporters.
Damn right.
Sadly, that is the state, of a lot of stuff. Danny, what are you on the Squeaky Bum Meter for this?
I'm probably right in the middle. I don't know. I that's maybe a boring answer. I'll try to make it not boring, but I see both sides of it. And I think that, my understanding is that, first of all, like we've already gone over, we've spent a certain amount of money on the players that have come in already. And so when you say only 20 million, then people immediately think of the big number, the number that we got for Netto and Kilman together, without thinking of the people that you've already brought in. And so we're talking about 20 million of basically a 35 million pound profit. So that's 15 million. I know that's close to half of what we brought in and whatever, but I do think that if that's what they said, that's kind of fine to me. It's just weird that it was put out in this way. I mean, the frustrating thing is that after a summer of I don't know, I guess what I feel is that there's a big split between the stuff that is on the field and the stuff that is, back office type of stuff. So it's I think someone brought up oh, I can't believe they made us hate Lopetegui, but basically pulled the same thing last summer. But it's I don't know, the way I remember it is that people hated Fosun then too, and it started probably well before then, but it felt like there was a big split there where it was that was the moment that a majority of at least the people that I follow started to feel I'm going to be frustrated at Fosun for these things. I'm going to be frustrated at Lopetegui for these other things. And now ever since Gary O'Neill's come in, and that's been kind of a blessing that nobody saw coming, is that it's I love the things that are happening on the pitch. I think Gary O'Neill's doing a great job. I think that the harmony in the squad is as good as I've ever seen it. All these positive things, but everything that comes out of the actual organization. And I have to say, I personally sort of feel that it's a lot of Jeff Shee, because I know that he does a lot of this, this communication on his own. I just am kind of curious about who puts out a story like this, whatever John Percy's source is, to know that we're heading into a season where there's a lot of positivity for the team on the field, even if it gives you some marginal benefit in the transfer window to say that you only have so much to spend. I just don't see the benefit of it overall when there's already kind of a grumpy sentiment about the way that the club is being run. We're going into the very first home game of the season that, as far as I can tell, they still haven't sold out, despite the fact that it's against a Big Six team. And I don't really understand the purpose of it. It's driving another wedge between the club and its supporters. And it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Honestly, the amount of money we're talking about for a club and a backing company the size of Fosun and Wolves, like, is not like, I'm not dying over here over that, but like, I don't know what it's doing to the supporters just feels awful, especially when they're pricing people out at the same time.
Chris?
Oh, but they painted poles, they painted walls. That makes people feel a hell of a lot better. And I find it very convenient, the timing of this. I mean, the PR has just been so terrible. I don't know who's running that situation for Jeff, but the fact is, O'Neal signs the contract, and then this gets leaked. It's horrendous timing. It's the same message for the fourth straight manager. They want some backing. They get told they're going to be backed, and then the goalposts get moved again. I understand. Maybe they end up spending it. I understand all the points about Sarabia, Podence, and Guedes, but you can't continue to do this. Not only if I'm a free agent, I wouldn't want to come to your club if you're constantly crying poor mouth. That makes zero sense. If I'm an agent, I'm sure as hell not talking to you. So the PR's got to be cleaned up. And I can't imagine, or maybe, I hate to put this out there, it just could be a leak for the purposes of they're tired of it. The people internally at the club, it could cause dissension. At this point, Matt Hobbs has to feel like the Great Wall because he's protecting the China entity and the fans from their bases. So Matt Hobbs, big boy, maybe he's the Great Wall from now on.
By the way, Paul has recommended that the Squeaky Bum Meter be officially renamed the Yersin Bum Squeezometer, and I am all for that. So from here on out is the Yersin Bum Squeezometer. Alex,
we've got to get that right though. Again, what's the squeeze? Is a light squeeze not too much?
I think based on we're going to go too far here, but I think it's how far in there are we going? Because Yersin got pretty far in there.
He did. He almost needed a glove. Like, definitely a PSA was being checked.
Oh my.
Alex, there was a no stupid question on this.
Yeah, from
not on the prostate.
No, not on that. On Fosun. So Mike on X writes in at WLW Pod. We look as though we may be good enough to stay up, and that's all Fosun are interested in. So why would they spend much more money? They'll keep it going for panic buys in January should we be struggling. But for a club of our size and ambition, is this actually a good plan?
And that was something Andrew Beyer backed up here a few minutes ago on our chat. He said if Wolves are hovering around 16th in January, maybe only a few points above the relegation line, do you think they spend? So that kind of goes along, Paul, with that panic buying in January, and that's almost built into the budget, that's disappointing.
It is. There's that contingency of, again, it's not like... It's the lack of ambition. It's not putting that to good in the short term. It's having some back in case there's that panic that, oh shit, we're in a relegation fight here. We need 15, 20, 25 million to keep us up so that next year we can do exactly the same again and be battling around 15th to 16th. And that's all that we're good for. So it is disheartening when they've had that much progress, they've been that close to touching the next level, that next ring on the ladder of league placing, potential European competition, to be scrambling around now in this type of situation where, truth be told, look at the likes of Villa, look at the likes of Newcastle, look at the likes of Brighton, even what they've been able to do either with spending and having some ambition or a really strategic and well executed transfer strategy. It puts us to shame in certain respects.
So there was one more report today that came out and said Wolves have made a proposal to sign Arsenal goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale. It would be a loan deal with an option to buy, and Wolves would cover the majority of his wages. Don't know if Dan Bentley's going the other way. What's the deal with Saw? I mean, initially, Chris, when you see that, what are your thoughts?
I was actually proud of the fact against Arsenal. It's good to see Jose Sa send the ball long again. Last couple of years, he's really had an issue with the ball at his feet, they would say, in tight spaces. And he was able to send it long, try to feed it out there. And now all this talk about bringing in Ramsdale, it's really interesting to me. Dan Bentley, the money, they said it wasn't enough. I think the offer, maybe 50,000 was the latest that they were offered for him. It could have been escalated, but I don't know if I'm making that move right now. They might need veteran leadership back there is possibly the only thing I could think of if they decide that they're going to continue to play Totti and Mosquera together as their starters, and that way he can educate them back, on the goal line. I just don't know if it's the right move, and I think I'd allocate money in other spaces than trying to bring in a veteran goaltender.
According to Capology.com, Danny, if Wolves were covering the majority of the salary, he would be the highest paid Wolves player at £120,000 a week. Sarabia's at $90,000. So I don't know. I don't think this is happening unless Saw's gone.
Hold on. Let me take a drink of my Negroni. Let's not bring in Ramsdale, please. Dear God. I mean, look, I guess I'm being more apocalyptic about this than I was about the Fosun stuff, which is unfair. But it's not going to relegate the club. But if there is a player in this league who I think would come in and relegate us to spite us, it would be Aaron Ramsdale, who has priors with Wolves. He has priors as a Baggies fan, and I know that often doesn't mean much for professionals. But it's very strange. Once again, any regard for the supporters would be very strange about this. We're not talking about Craig Dawson was a pro there for a while. He's openly antagonized Wolves fans. Now, on the sporting merit of it, I just don't see that he is any better than Jose Sa. I mean, if you look at all the main metrics, especially when we're talking about stuff like, playing with his feet or distribution or whatever, the stuff we perceive as Sa's weaknesses, at best, he's the same. And he's often worse, especially with the ball at his feet. I just don't see any sense in it. And as you say, financially, it also doesn't make sense that we're going to pay potentially a £5 million loan fee plus covering some probably very high wages. And his weird attitude about losing the number one spot at Arsenal and what that did for his England chances. He was very public about that. I just don't need any of that drama. It's kind of like when we talked about U.S. players coming to Wolves and we talked about Gio Reyna, where it's I just don't want that drama. Even if, he's the baggy stuff, whatever, that was just banter or whatever. It's I just don't want that kind of drama. Jose Sa is a different kind of drama. He's a fun kind of drama. Let's not bring in this toxic attitude.
It's all in-game drama with Jose Sa. Okay, we're going to play one of our favorite games. At least I know this is Degenerate Gambler Alex's favorite game, and that is Over Under. So I'm going to have a few out here. Guys that are watching live, feel free to chime in on this. We'll read your responses as well. We're going to be real quick with the responses here. First one, Mosquera card-related suspensions. I'm setting that at 2.5. So that can be both a red card or an accumulation of yellow cards. Paul, what do you think? Over, under 2.5?
Over. I think we're gonna see accumulation, and we're gonna see at least one red.
Chris,
you got to go over. I mean, he got away with choking somebody. Okay, so what else can he get away with? He's gonna tempt fate a little bit. Definitely go over.
Danny,
I desperately want to say under, but the answer is obviously over.
Alex, did I set the line too low, Alex? I thought 3.5.
No, it's a fair line. But considering, like Chris said, he started one game for us and he should have got a red. He'd be 1 for 1. So I'm going over.
Everybody, all the viewers right now have said over, except for Ed Chavez from Dallas. He said under. Ryan McCarthy said he might have 2 before Boxing Day, which that is true. He's a red card waiting to happen. Okay, Paul, based on how Totti and Mosquera played together, I'm going to ask you, Craig Dawson starts over under 18.5 regular season only.
League is under. I think he's a bit part player.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to say under. I just think he's that veteran presence back there at this point, and unless Mosquera's out, no.
Okay. Danny?
I'm also going to go under, but I'm a little more nervous about it than the other two because I think we might see some formation changes, which would change my mind about that.
Alex, the reason I set this at 18.5 is because I do think still they're going to want that veteran guy back there. I don't know. Do you think my line was off here?
I think it's a little high, actually. You're usually quite a good bookmaker, but I'm gonna go ahead and say under as well.
Okay. I think over, and Todd from Minnesota agrees with me. Everybody else seems to be saying under. I don't know. I just think maybe against the lower level teams we'll see Tony and Mosquero, but I think against the upper level teams now Dawson's going to get in. Huang starts. Now, this is interesting. He was kind of invisible for a lot of time. I know he almost had a great assist for Strand Larson, but if they're bringing in a Netto replacement and Rodrigo Gomez, Huang starts, plus he's injury prone. Paul, 22.5.
Under, and quite comfortably.
Ooh,
comfortably. Chris?
Wow. I'm going to have to go. Yeah, I'm going to have to go under. I just think they're trying to form something new and bring him as a complementary piece in a time where he can play off other guys and position calls for it. But at this point, I think I'm going to go under. And his health, obviously.
Yeah. Danny?
I'll go against the grain on this one and say over. I don't have a great reason for it, just that every manager has really loved him, and I think he has improved. Hopefully, being able to bring him off after 70 minutes means that he'll be less injury prone.
Alex, I think I got this line pretty well. Huh? What do you think? Over, under?
Yeah, I think so. Well, considering my my surprise of the season was that he wouldn't finish the season with Wolves, I have to go under.
That's true.
So yeah, but I think the line is good.
It looks like we have a split amongst the viewers right now. Mike and Andrew take under. Ryan and Ed take over. So very interesting. Okay, outgoings before the end of the transfer window to hopefully gain more funds. 2.5, Paul. Over, under?
Over.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'll go over as well on that. And I know you want me to elaborate, but I can hear my kid crying in the room next door. So I kind of missed the question, but I caught the back end.
Danny?
You set the line really well. I'll go under Podence and Fabio.
Okay. Alex, I think I almost thought 3.5. No, that's too much. So 2.5.
I'm gonna go over. I think Fabio gets a move, whether it's a loan or not. I agree on Podence, and I think there'll be one more player maybe that we're like kind of surprised, not that surprised. Could be Sa, could be Sarabia. One more player who's of a bit more significance, I would say.
Yeah. I think over, but we'll see. Let's see. Mike and Ryan agree with me, as does Todd. Andrew says under, and Ed says under. So nice little split there. And finally, the amount spent on incoming players. Over, under, Paul, 15.5 million pounds.
Over.
Ooh, he thinks they're going to empty
With confidence.
Pockets. What do you think, Chris?
Are you kidding me? I think Hobbs is showing up with coupons and giving them out to clubs. Maybe a promo code. Maybe if you sign up for the Reaper new album coming out on the Wolves production label. No, I think they're under. I think it's, maybe 9 million.
Ooh, 9. Danny?
I have no idea. I'll go under just because that's the cynical point of view.
Okay. Alex?
I'm going to go over. Like Paul, I'm pretty confident in that. I actually feel like this Carlos Forbes deal is going to get done, and I think he's going to come close to that number, if not surpass it already. So I'm not too worried about them spending at least 15. We're not talking net spend, right? Like we're talking,
No.
yeah, because we'll definitely be taking in money for all the players they just said we're going to sell.
See, and that's why I think it'll be over, because they are going to take in some. I do think Forbes is going to happen, so we shall see. So that was this episode of Over Under. Thanks everybody. It looks like we had a nice little split there. Ryan was the only one to say over. Everybody else seems to think Fosun's going to be tightening up the purse strings. Well, guys, the home opener is Sunday this week, 9 a.m. Eastern. That's Chris, Danny, and Alex. 8 a.m. for me and Paul in Central Time Zone. So what do we think first? Is Netto going to make an appearance in Molyneux? Paul?
I think, well, you don't know what squad Chelsea are going to put out, never mind the starting 11. So I still think starting is a little bit of an ask for him so early after his move and in the season. So will we see him again like the cameo he had on Sunday just gone? Possibly. Will he still cause us trouble? If he does, definitely. But I don't see him starting.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think he'll start, but I think he'll come in to a nice ovation from, the Molyneux crowd. I look forward to this game because it's not just because Netto's coming back, but it's also a chance for him to line up and kind of see who he's going to go up against. Is it going to be Aït-Nouri? Will they play him on the other side and he'll go up against Semedo? I don't know, but it should be fascinating to kind of give us a glimpse of what training was like over the years with him. And show us that speed you guys were all alluding to that we were missing when he finally does come back on the pitch, and compare him to what we saw as Wolves played out throughout the game.
All right, Danny, what kind of lineup changes do you anticipate?
First, I'm going to go back to Chris and say, well, Semedo's still out with this suspension, so he's lining up on Yerson Mosquera's side, so he better be careful. I'll just leave it at that.
I got faith, Danny. I had faith, but apparently I was way off. But I do look forward to Mosquera against Cole Palmer.
Yeah, so like Paul said, the last one, I've been doing some opposition research, before we set up some opposition guests potentially in the future. And let me tell you, Chelsea's a difficult one because their transfer business alone is bewildering. I couldn't begin to tell you what their plan is. Either they're the biggest geniuses in the world or they're going to be bankrupt in the next 10 years. I have no idea. So just to quickly go through the notable ones, players like Thiago Silva and Ziyech are gone. Conor Gallagher is stuck in limbo. They're doing some weird youngster swapping with Newcastle and Villa. And I think Ipswich is involved too, where they're selling these 18 and 19-year-olds for like £30 million. Coming in, not a ton of other players that are first teamers, except for, of course, Pedro Neto. They do have a new striker who may or may not start. Mark Goyi. They have about 9 different goalkeepers they could choose from. It seems like it'll still be Sanchez. So all I can say is that I kind of expect it to be like their game against Man City. I agree with Paul. I think that Netto probably doesn't start. I wouldn't be surprised to see 1 or 2 of the forward line switch out. And that's where the caveat is. I suppose Netto could be one of those, but like I said, they have about 1 million players. So take your pick. Broya is still on their books. Kieran Dewsbury Hall is now on their books. Who knows?
Okay, guys, let's look at the prediction board thus far. Danny, you got 3 points to start the season. Very nice. Well, not so nice because Wolves lost. Paul and I each got a point, and Alex in the guest spot got no points with their draw prediction. So, Chris, we're going to start off with you. What's your prediction for this game?
I'm going to go 2-2. I think we got a chance to see a Strand Larson first goal. I think that's going to be impressive. And I think Mateus Cunha tickles the twine with a goal. So I think that's I know it's a basketball term, but you got to use it every once in a while.
Now, does he tickle it like Yerson Mosquero? That's the question.
That's very sensible tickle on that one.
Danny?
This is a tough one. I think that honestly we have enough strength to beat them and beat them handily based on how out of sorts they are. But I am also battling against my innate pessimism that we will absolutely lose. So I'll go with a 2-1 Wolves win.
Oh, 2-1 Wolves. I like it. Okay, Alex?
I am also going to say a 2-2 draw. I love Chris's prediction. I think there's goals in this. Sadly, I feel like Cole Palmer gets on the scoring sheet as well. But I think we're going to get after them a little bit. Kukurea is a liability, and I love that he came out and was talking trash to Holland and got absolutely owned by him. I don't understand how. I mean, I do understand how he's an everyday starter for them defensively at a club like Chelsea because everyone else is hurt. The same way I don't understand how Enzo Fernandez is a captain when one of his own teammates was offended by a racist comment he made over the summer. Enzo Maresca is so unfit for this job. He'll be out before November, and I hope that Wolves taking points off of them on Saturday contributes to that. And we just keep this thing rolling where we just kind of, boss around the team that just likes to spend money frivolously. I can't stand them. So I wanted to say a win, though, but I just can't because their XG was actually great against City.
Paul, some predictions that are coming in. Mike says 2-0 Wolves. Ed from Dallas says 2-1 Wolves. Todd from Minnesota says 1-1 draw. What say you?
I'm in that Todd from Minnesota camp. I think it's a good time to play him. But then there's the unexpected element of it. But he could fall on any combination of that squad and put out a good team. And I think that's what we've got to be a little fearful of, especially if Az is still finding its feet a little. So I don't want to be too negative and predict a loss. So I'm gonna go for a point, and I think point and a good performance based on our next opponent could set us up quite well. So 1-1.
This is when you know things are crazy at Chelsea. We've made it through the prediction segment without even saying Raheem Sterling's name, who was left out of the team, and his team made public comments about how they need to reset expectations for him this season. Like, it's such an S show. Like, come on.
It's bad. I'm gonna join on with Paul and say a 1-1 draw. I think it'll be a fun game, entertaining game. Alex, we do have some of our favorite segment.
Of course, No Stupid Questions, our favorite segment, and it is brought to you by Esfuerzo Wine. So thanks everyone who wrote in. We're going to get to your questions here shortly. You can always tweet them or X them, and I still don't know what the verb is for that.
No one does.
Okay,
yeah. At WLW Pod is the show's handle on X, and email hello@wholelotofwolves.com if you choose to. If you prefer to do it that way. So let's go with Stone Cold Strand Larson, formerly known as Nothing But Netto, also known as our friend Adam, who says, how much control does Gary O'Neill have on the squad? We saw Geddes used throughout preseason, but didn't get used at all against Arsenal. Instead, Podence came in. Was that a shop window demand from Jeff Shee or Hobbs, or Gary using his best players? I thought it was interesting. I did not expect to see him. I don't know about you guys.
I just don't think Geddes is good enough to play against Arsenal, Paul.
I think it was. I think it highlights what O'Neill is like as a coach, regardless of player or what's gone on, because he kind of talked to that from coming in last year. The damage had been done with the likes of Geddes and Podence. That was someone else he's doing now. Whether it was the club and they've totally burnt their bridges, fair enough, and it's just a matter of time. Whether that was Lopetegui saying, I don't want these players, I'm going to ostracize them, I'm going to get them away, however it may be, that could have been another thing. But I think O'Neill's just been professional in that he's worked with the team and the squad regardless this pre-season. He's probably looked at the players at his disposal, but yeah, Saturday was a weird one in that if any of those players weren't on the bench, would it have been that telltale sign that they've gone and perhaps impact some negotiation that, okay, that they weren't going to be even on the bench at all, so that brings the value down. Whereas they had Lima, who's prime, ready, perfect space for him to start getting accustomed to the league by taking a spot on the bench, especially with somewhat of a shaky right back. So I think it to me, out of everything, it just said that I think there's some weight in the rumours around Sarabia, because he wasn't even looked at, and for Prudence to come on and have minutes, that was quite telling.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think that we saw Guedes, we saw a little bit of Prudence, we saw a lot of Sarabia in the preseason, but to not see Guedes, maybe the game didn't call for it at that time, but we saw him spell Strand Larson. When he came off, we saw Guedes, take over that role during the preseason. For him not to play now, it's pretty telling. I think he's given every sign indication that he wants out. Now, if I'm wrong and they have kind of healed that relationship a little bit, then I think he should play. I think he needs to show what he can bring to the table and why they signed him originally for all that money.
Yeah. And to your point, about not really we saw Sarabia in the 84th minute, I guess. But did anyone else just feel like that when Wolves had that control over the game and they were basically spending most of the time in Arsenal's final third, that it was kind of well suited for Sarabia? Like, that was the one point of the game when you need a guy to to pick the lock on a defense, and that's like maybe the one thing he's better at than anyone else that we have on our squad, other than maybe set pieces, because nobody seems to be able to deliver a good corner. So I thought that was weird. So yeah, maybe he's that surprise that's on his way out. Okay, let's go to Todd DeWitt, who writes in, if you were on the game show Family Feud, which Wolves players would you want on your team? This feels like a Josh question. Why don't we leave with you, Josh?
I was all ready for it. So definitely you want Lamina. I think he's a very he'll think of a lot of stuff. I actually kind of want to go Strand Larson here as who I think could be really good, because I think he's going to be an outside the box thinker. He's going to be thinking more of those Gen Z type of things. So I like them. Nelson Semedo, I think he's another type in the Lamina area. So who would be my fourth one to join on me? I assume I can't have Gary O'Neill, right? Or can I?
He said Wolves player.
So if I can't have Gary O'Neill, I gotta have Craig Dawson. Craig Dawson, again, that seems like something. He grew up kind of in our era, so he was definitely watching Family Feud in the afternoons.
Nice. Any other nominations from the group? I love the Semedo shot, by the way. He seems like he's probably really witty.
I was very surprised by Semedo at the meet and greet in Fort Lauderdale. He definitely seemed really quick on his feet and everything, and had a good sense of humor. So
especially when continually asked about playing with Messi. He's like, "Oh, this again?"
And if playing in the Premier League was hard.
And I will tell you, I think Strand Larson, for this club, we're going to see a lot of him on Wolves social media and their media pages this year. That guy is a media darling, especially if he can put the ball in the net.
Yeah.
Oh,
so well.
Todd pointed out Dawson, Semedo, and Cunha. Yeah. I don't know. I think Cunha would be the one that would make Steve Harvey just stare at him in disbelief.
Yeah, agreed. He'd be great for a laugh. I mean, he had to do the rapid responses on that thing that he was doing. What was that game? I forget what it's called, but it was like the Premier League's official social media. When then he agreed to do the celebration of him hitting the buzzer. So maybe he's good under pressure as well. Anyway, that'll do it for No Stupid Questions. And thanks to our friends at Esfuerzo Wines. Of course, go to esfuerzowines.com. Use the promo code Wolves and get a 20% discount off of your wine order. Season's changing. Maybe we're shifting from white to red. Start loading up for the fall. Holidays are coming. These are things we got to think about now. It's football season.
The fall. It was 110 heat index. I wish. Chris, it's hot where your neck of the woods, but tell listeners how they can get a hold of you if they are in the Fort Lauderdale area.
Oh, you can find me on Wolves USA Facebook. We actually have the Twitter handle, the proper one underneath here, Chris Fisher _. I'm not going to give out my phone number because oftentimes you find it in the phone booth. So yeah, no, that's about it, guys. But
I feel
really
like there's a
appreciate-
story there. Find it in the phone booth.
I mean, yeah, not for here, not on the live broadcasts, but it's normally in the unisex bathroom, which I find funny, but that's okay.
Next Wolves preseason tour, apparently. Oh,
Yes.
man.
Viewers, listeners, that brings this week's show to an end. Thanks to Alex producing, Danny on the socials, and everyone for tuning in, listening. Without you, this platform wouldn't exist. So thank you for your participation. We're going to be back similar time, similar place next week. We've got back-to-back with the start of the Carabao Cup kicking off. That's a home game against Burnley, and then it is on to an away trip to Nottingham to take on Nuno and Notts Forest. So in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you know what to do. Up the mighty Wolves.